Hi, I'm Crystal from TradeGecko. Thanks for joining our webinar on branding. Our guest speaker today, Jess Van Den, is going to take you through some of the best ways to create a brand that your customers will love. Jess is a self-employed silversmith with her own Etsy shop specializing in eco-sterling silver wedding rings. She's the founder and editor of Create and Thrive, where creatives learn how to turn their hobbies into full-time businesses. If you have questions during the presentation, please submit them through GoToWebinar in the questions section, and we'll answer them during the Q&A session at the end. Jess, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here today. So I'm here to chat about branding and specifically how to tell a brand story your customers will love. And why is that important? We'll talk about why that's important. We'll talk about a couple of different story archetypes that you can tell, that you can use to tell your story. And we'll talk about some tools you can use to tell that story as well. The first thing I want to talk about is asking you this question about your business. And that is, are you a commodity or are you already set up as a brand? And this is a really important distinction to make. You know, no matter what you're making, you can either treat your business like you're selling a commodity, or you can treat yourself like a brand. And there is a very big difference between these two things. And what is that difference? Well, the fact is that customers don't demonstrate loyalty to commodities, but they can fall in love with a brand. And this slide is a quote from Bernadette Jiwa, who is a really great business thinker. And I'll recommend one of her books at the end, actually, to deepen your understanding of this subject. But she gives this simple solution here, a simple equation. A product minus meaning equals a commodity, and a product with a meaning equals a brand. So, you know, anything can be a commodity. If you're trying to compete on, you know, price, you're basically going to be treating your business like a commodity. But if you can build a brand and build a story, that is something that your customers will connect to, and it's something that will foster customer loyalty, and it will also enable you to position yourself where you choose in the marketplace rather than competing solely on price. I mean, if you think about the big brands in the world, they don't compete on price, they compete on their branding and their storytelling, and that's what sets them apart. That's what makes people fall in love with them. Use Apple as an example. That's a great example of a company that people are really loyal to because they fall in love with the brand, and not only the brand itself, but what that says about them. And that's a really important point as well. Because this question, what are you really selling? No matter what your product is, no matter who you're selling to, what you're really selling is actually a feeling. It's an emotion. People buy your thing because it will make them feel a certain way. It will make them, maybe it'll make them happy. Maybe it'll make them relieved. Maybe it'll take stress out of their lives. Maybe it will fulfill a niche need in their business or their life. And so what you're really selling is that feeling, whatever it is. The product, you know, itself is meant to evoke that feeling in them. So by really working out what this is, you can start to connect with your customers better. So what turns a commodity into a brand that people will love and become loyal to? Well, it's really an authentic story that they can connect to on an emotional level. It's a story that moves them in some way, that they can feel a part of and that speaks to them. You know, a customer will fall in love with a brand that seems to be talking their language, that seems to be addressing their particular life, their particular problems, their particular successes, whatever it may be that you're trying to, you know, create, or whatever feeling you're trying to create. If you can do it well, you will build that brand and you will build that brand loyalty as well. And an important part of that process is this idea of authenticity. So what is authenticity and why does it matter? Well, authenticity is simply when what you say aligns with what you do. So I'm sure we can all think of examples of companies where they say one thing, but they actually do another, or they support something else. So they're lacking in authenticity there. They're saying one thing, but they're doing another, or they're saying they care about something, or they're saying they care about a certain part of their customers' lives, but then they demonstrate that they don't in some of their actions. So it's really important, if you want to go down this path of building a story around your brand, an authentic brand story, that you get really clear on, what you care about, what your customers care about, and how you can connect those two things. Because there's no point in telling stories about stuff that you as a business think your customers might care about, but that you don't actually walk the walk in. So I'll use my own business as an example. My jewellery business, we make sterling silver wedding rings, and we use recycled sterling silver. We have solar power, or we've just installed it. We had it in our old house, and now we've just installed it in our new house. We use, low impact packaging material as much as we can. So basically, we're talking and walking the walk of, that eco-friendly aesthetic, and thinking about recycling things. So that's a part of our brand story, and it's important to us to actually live that, and not only in our business, but in our lives in general as much as possible. But it's something that our customers care about, and we don't, make it a big deal, but we kind of weave it through everything about our business. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about with authenticity. It's finding that connection point between the things that really matter to you and your business and the things that matter to your customers. Because really, when it comes down to it, trust is key to this process. If people trust you, they'll believe what you tell them about your business, and they'll fall in love with your business and be part of the story and feel that they're part of the story. And we all know in business, our reputation is everything. So maintaining this authenticity and building this trust, especially if you're like me and you run an online business that doesn't have a place where people can come and actually talk to you, building this trust through all of the tools we're going to talk about later is a really, really important part of this storytelling process. So this is the next question I want to ask you, and that is, what story is your brand telling, and what feeling is it selling? I just want to repeat that. What story is your brand telling, and what feeling is it selling? And if you're not clear on these two things, then you need to kind of knuckle down and really get clear on this. Because without knowing the feeling that you're trying to evoke in your customers, your storytelling is going to be all over the place, because you don't have a goal, you don't have something that you're aiming for, you don't have an emotion you're trying to evoke to build that connection between yourselves and your customers. So here's a few questions that will help you in that process. The first one is, who are your customers and what do you care about? So here we've got the ideal customer, your target customer, your target market. Hopefully you've done some research and some deep thinking about this already. If you've been in business for a long time, just knowing who you're working with and who your customers are should be relatively clear by now. But if this isn't something you've done a lot of work in, I highly recommend you take some time to do that, because until you know exactly who your customers are, you don't know how to talk to them. If your customers are, if you're a B2B business, for example, and your customers run a certain type of business in a certain demographic, how old are they? Where do they live? What's their family situation? All of those things. What does their business care about? If you're dealing with other businesses, what are their business stories, and how can you become part of those? If you're selling direct to consumers, you really need to have a clear idea of where they are, who they are, what they care about. Because unless you know what they care about, you can't build that emotional connection to your brand. So the second one, of course, is, what problem are you solving for them? What need are you fulfilling? What is the point of your product to their lives? What is it going to do for them? And that's obviously incredibly important in this, because that's something that you can talk to them about in your storytelling. is really focusing on, you know, what are the benefits of your product in their life. And we always want to talk about the benefits before we talk about the features. So highlighting the benefits, and benefits is again an emotionally driven thing. And the third thing, what emotion are you trying to evoke in them with your product? And get really in depth with this, like brainstorm all of the potential ways that your product might impact upon your customers in a positive way, and think about how you can make that really clear to them in your messaging and in your storytelling that your product will, you know, fulfill this emotional need or this need in their lives or solve this problem for them, and what that will mean for their life or for their business if you're a B2B. So I want to talk about now 3 story archetypes and give you a couple of examples, of really good examples of how other companies have done this, and 3 story archetypes you can use, and they're very straightforward, to connect with your customers. So the very first one is the origin story. And this has been around for millennia. It's, you know, the origin story of the hero, of the villain, whatever. We always want to know the origin story. So as a business, it's really important that you tell your origin story, take control of that story, and tell it in a way that will connect with your ideal customers. So my example here is Huit Denim, and they're a bespoke denim company from the UK. So this is actually when I was planning this webinar, this is the first company that came to mind when I was thinking about origin stories. And the reason is because I read about it, God, it must have been 1 or 2 years ago now, it was a while ago, but it really stuck in my mind as a really powerful origin story. So, and by the way, I really encourage you after this webinar to go check out these 3 companies and just poke around a little bit and see what I'm talking about when it comes to the stories they're telling. These guys on their front page, actually down the bottom, you can't see it on this screenshot, they have a video that just shows the process of their jeans being made, and that's another archetype. But their origin story really is about a passion for us doing one thing well, as they say here, and also connecting with the past and taking care of their community. It's all about simplicity, and it has a really clear focus. So the story is this. They come from a small town in England, in the UK, and it's a town called Cardigan, and they used to make jeans. There used to be a big factory there that made jeans. Okay, but a while ago that factory closed down, and this is a town of about 4,000 people, and about 400 of them were employed by this big company. So what happened? All of these people lost their jobs in the community. So this company decided to start this business making jeans in the community so that they could start re-employing people. And these people who they actually call their makers grandmasters. You know, these people have been making jeans for possibly decades. They know how to make a good pair of jeans. That's what they do, and that's all they do. So they've taken these people and they've given them jobs again. You know, they're reinvigorating their local community. They're showing they care about people. They care about doing one thing well, and that's the story that they're telling, and that's how they're going to connect with people who care about that sort of thing. You know, people who want that one pair of awesome, well-made jeans that's going to last them a decade or more, and that care about small communities surviving and thriving in the modern world, where, you know, there's the large global overarching thing of, you know, businesses moving offshore, et cetera, et cetera. So they're bringing it back. It's the artisan handmade mentality, and that's what they're focused on. So it's a really powerful origin story, and they weave it through everything they talk about and everything they do. So that's my first example. The second example I have is, and the second archetype, is the happy customer story. Now, we all know about this one. You know, if you've ever watched late night infomercials that are full of these happy customer testimonials where they're talking about how wonderful the product is and how it changed their life and what difference it, and, you know, again, if you're watching that sort of stuff, and I know it's a bit cheesy, but the reason it works is because it connects with people. They see themselves in that in that person and go, oh, it's made them feel this way. It's solved that problem for them. So maybe it'll do the same for me. And so that's what the happy customer story archetype works with. So my example is Dharma Bums, which is a company I'm actually a big fan of myself. I have a lot of their tights because I moonlight as a yoga instructor in my spare time. And so what they do, and it's very clever, is they use their customers to sell their product, basically. They use the happy customer archetype very deeply to sell their product to other people who want their stuff, which are, predominantly other yogis and stuff like that. And how do they do that? Well, they use some of the tools that we're going to be talking about later. Instagram is a big one for them. They, as you can see here, like these are all photos that their customers have taken, posted on their own Instagram account, and then Dharma Bums has featured them on their own Instagram. And it's actually a huge thing. It's people who are yoga teachers and, passionate yogis and even, other sports as well, Pilates, etc. It's a thing people try to aspire to, is to get their photo on this Instagram feed. Dharma Bums have their own hashtags that they tell you to use if you want to, possibly get featured. I mean, you can see here, I took this screenshot about a week ago. They've got 89,000 followers. Like, they've got a lot of followers. So for people who are building their own businesses, for example, and this is an example of B2B as well, yoga teachers who want to get more students, if they get featured on here, they're going to get a huge influx of customers, potential students, and it's based in Australia, but they ship all over. So Australian yogis especially want to get featured on here. Now, Dharma Bums takes this another stage. If you go to their website, on the main page down the bottom, they have these photos. They have a huge feed of their Instagram accounts, and when you go into individual products, they actually take photos from customers and put them on the individual product. So they show their customers wearing that product in like a real world setting, and put it on the actual product. So when you go to potentially buy a pair of leggings, you can actually see real people wearing them and enjoying them. And not only that, the images that they choose to share are aspirational and inspirational. So their customers see these, images, and they want to look like that. They want to be able to do that pose. So it's all about showing how people can achieve and how they can feel happy and how they can be this amazing thing or do this amazing pose if they wear their leggings, right? So they do a really good job of connecting their current customers with their new customers. So that's an example of really using your customers, and it sounds terrible, but highlighting your customers' stories, using images, using their feedback and quotes. And these guys do it extremely heavily. Like, pretty much their entire Instagram feed is happy customers. So that can be a really powerful way of connecting with and growing that connection with potential customers. So the third archetype is the behind the scenes story. And my example here is one I kind of stumbled upon, Bissinger's Chocolates. I believe they're based in the US. And there's actually a YouTube link here. And it's a video that they show. They basically just show their factory. But it really stood out to me when you're watching. They actually follow one particular product through all of its stages, mixed in with other products. But this particular product is chocolate-covered blackberries, which sound delicious. Chocolate-covered blackberries, and they show them being sorted by hand. Then they show them being covered, and then they show like the next stage where somebody else sorts those ones that have already been covered, and then and so on. So it's, they're showing how much work and how much actual human interaction goes on with these products without blatantly saying it. And then when you go to the shop and you look at these, you can get 300 grams of these, or 11 ounces, for $40, $40 US. So it's not cheap. They're a boutique quality brand. And if you just came across the chocolates and saw the prices, you might be like, wow, that's not, I can't spend that much on chocolate. But by showing behind the scenes, by telling that story, you go, oh, wow, no, that's actually, they've put a lot of work into that. And so I can understand now why these chocolates are so expensive, because there's all this handcrafting that's going on in there, and, you know, it's made in small batches and it's all fresh and high quality. So they draw you in, and without actually having to blatantly state it, you are convinced of the quality and therefore why they cost what they cost. And that's a really great strategy, especially if you are in a higher end market, of showing people, you know, the behind the scenes and the why things are worth the money. So that's my 3 story archetypes for you. And that, like I said, they're all pretty straightforward ones, but you'd be amazed how often people just don't tell these stories. And it's really important to tell these stories. So let's talk about tools. 5 tools that you can use to tell your story. The 5 I've highlighted, and this is not an exhaustive list, obviously, but the ones that are probably at this point in time the most useful are Instagram, Facebook, email, YouTube, and your blog on your website. Now, why these tools? Basically, they work because they give you direct contact between you and your customer and allow you to tell your authentic story in your way. Now, if you have a big budget and you can, you know, do TV ads or whatever, that's great. That's another way to reach out and connect. But the beauty of these particular channels, especially Facebook and Instagram these days, if you're willing to spend a bit of money on advertising, you can really, you know, niche down and connect with the exact right people and get your message in front of the exact target audience that you're aiming for. Is, you know, that you have that personal connection. And the world has moved, and even big businesses now really heavily rely on these tools because people like to feel like they're connecting with other people. And it, again, comes back to building that emotional connection between your brand and yourself. You know, in the old days, brands really focused on telling a bigger story, like a higher level story. But these days, it's more about the one-to-one sort of stories. And so it's really important to take hold of these wonderful platforms that are available now to tell that story, to foster that emotional connection and build trust. So I'll give you an example of how you can use all of these together. So you can create a video which you post to YouTube and post to Facebook separately. You want to upload it to Facebook, not just put a YouTube link in there, with a short keyword-rich description that catches people's attention. You know, there's so many videos and stuff streaming on Facebook these days as people scroll through. You really need to capture them. So make sure like that first image on the video is something great. You know, you can put a screenshot with a caption on there or whatever it might be, but it needs to grab their attention. The little description needs to grab their attention right from the get-go so they watch it. Then you can post behind the scenes photos of making the video. And also, if you're on Instagram, there's a feature in Instagram called Stories. So there's the main photos that you can post on Instagram, but then you can actually upload stories that only last for a day and then they disappear. So that is another feature that you could use during the process, if you want to, of making the video. Again, it's showing people inside the process and making them feel like an insider, making them feel like they're part of it. And even responding to their comments, you know, during that process. And it also builds anticipation. Then you the video and you post it on your blog with, you know, you embed a YouTube video and you write a summary of the video content or you write a teaser about it. And then that same thing you send off to your mailing list and encourage them to go watch the video. You might even include a little clip there. You might include some screenshots, whatever it may be. But basically with that, you know, one piece of content, it tells your story across all the platforms if you're smart about how you craft it and how you share the process of creating the video as well. And that's just one example. You know, if you're able to do, you know, a really great video, maybe hire some people to help you out, make sure, you know, don't miss the opportunity to get that behind the scenes stuff going on and let people have that window inside your business. Even like, you know, the funny stuff or the accidents or the bloopers, people, that makes you seem approachable and real, and it's a good thing. So in summary, these are the things you need to remember to really create that authentic brand story that'll connect with your audience. So you need to know who you're talking to and what they care about. You need to know what emotion you want to evoke through your messaging and through your product itself. You need to be authentic in this process. Don't pretend to care about an issue when you don't, because it will backfire when somebody finds you out, and it will ruin your reputation. Be clear on what their problem is and what their need is, and how your product will solve their problem or fulfill their need in your storytelling. And tell a story that weaves all of this together in a subtle way that will connect with your customers emotionally. So rather than, being blatant about it and hitting them over the head with it, that's not the way forward. You want to be telling a story that evokes this in your customers. And that's about that. Oh, this is the resource I told you, The Fortune Cookie Principle by Bernadette Dewar. Highly recommend this. She talks about, she's got a couple of other books as well that talk about storytelling in your business. And I guarantee if you read those, you will get some inspirations and some ideas about how to more authentically tell your story and connect with your customers. And I'm happy to take any questions now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Jess. A few questions that came in during the presentation. One, do I have to use all of these tools to tell my brand story?
No, of course not. That's just my suggestion of kind of the top 5 that I think are available these days to people. And this is available to everyone, no matter whether you're a one-person business or a big business, all these tools are available to you. So I think, you really need to work out what works for your business and really dive deep into using that platform in an intelligent way. If you are spread too thin, don't try to do everything at once, because that'll overwhelm you and it just won't work.
Okay, and what if we can't find a good hook for our brand origin story?
Look, if you think your origin story is not very exciting, you don't have to tell it. It's a great story to tell, but if you think, our origin story is not very exciting, it doesn't really evoke emotion in people, focus on the other stories. Focus on the happy customer stories. Focus on any other possible story archetypes, the behind the scenes stuff, and just leave it be. And if you can tell it, great. If you can't, don't make it the focus.
Okay, great. And one more. Is this applicable for B2B as well as B2C businesses?
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't matter who you're connecting with or who you're working with, right? You are working with human beings. There's, no matter if you're B2B or B2C, the person at the other end of the email or the transaction or whatever is a person. So they still have all of these things that they care about. The company itself, learn about the company ethos, learn about what the company stands for, what they care about. And then if you can actually learn about, the people who are going to be making these purchasing decisions, learn a bit more about them and what they care about as well. And that's more likely to result in brand loyalty, because again, they're feeling that connection person to person, and that's what it always comes down to.
Okay, great. That's the last of the questions. Thank you for all the information on branding.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It was awesome to chat about something I'm very passionate about.
And thanks to everyone for joining. On your way out, please take another minute to fill out our exit survey. And to find out more about TradeGecko, start a free trial at tradegecko.com. Thank you.
Thanks.